Yeah. So, based on the title alone, you should know what we're getting into here. This is a topic that has boiled my brain since I came across this Tumblr post that was basically everywhere at one point. It was simply the funniest thing I'd ever seen. Like, just the concept of some dedicated Naruto fan deciding to contribute to the fan community and going, you know what this story needs? A terrorist attack. And the author's note dedicated the fic to the victims and their families. This post obviously got stuck in my head for years to come, and I'd eventually come to be generally aware that this is, for whatever reason, a common fanfiction trope. I'd start a new show and would go online to see nice fan art, maybe some silly posts or theories, and suddenly I'd see someone saying, oh my god, someone made a 9/11 fanfiction, or something in the general field of someone made a fanfiction about fill in the blank terrible event. At some point I just googled 9/11 fanfiction just to see what would pop up, and I got this lovely screenshot, which I'm sure is a Hamilton fanfic and not just about the founding fathers, but still absolutely unhinged. This entire concept continued to stay in the back of my mind for ages, occasionally popping up when I wanted to ruin a friend's life with the knowledge that I was burdened with. Then one day, I decided to watch Disney's Gargoyles, which is set in the 1990s New York City. One of the shots of the city included the Twin Towers, which is always a bit jarring since, 9/11 happened, and a thought creeped into my head. These gargoyles are powerful beasts, fighting against injustice wherever they see it. Surely someone has had to have considered that they could have stopped it. And no, by the way, they could not. They turned to stone during the day, but what matters here is I had to know. So I did what any normal individual would do and searched 9/11 Gargoyles fanfiction. And yeah, there is a lot of it. I had never in my life actually read one of these stories, but I did that day, and I will now be going over some key parts. So, just starting off on the chapter header, ahem, this is based off of the dreadful event, 9/11. There will be angst and sometimes what if moments with one particular gargoyle, Brooklyn. Enjoy, in parentheses, partially. Angst? In this Gargoyles 9/11 fic? Thankfully, they let me know ahead of time. Now I know what I'm getting into. Also, I really appreciate that they let me know I will not be able to fully enjoy this because of the 9/11. I mean, hey, it could be the Gargoyles. It starts up with some pretty standard stuff for the 9/11 genre. They wake up at night in true Gargoyles fashion, flip to the news, and find out 9/11 happened that morning. Brooklyn takes it pretty hard and storms out, and the chapter ends. Chapter 2 is where shit hits the fan. Okay, so Brooklyn reveals that he made friends with a human woman about a month prior, and she works at the Twin Towers. It then cuts to a flashback to how he met this girl, Alice, who I don't think is actually in the show. I think she just exists here to make Brooklyn sad about a terrorist attack. I'm not going to read this out because it's gross, it makes me uncomfortable. You can pause to read it, but a quick essay trigger warning is necessary. It isn't very descriptive, but all I'll say is Brooklyn saves Alice from SA, which feels unnecessary, because it is. And we also get some racism, too, as the guys attacking Alice, quote, look like they are from another country, and gabble in Arabic language, because, yes, the author seems to think that the same guys who did 9/11 were also running around attacking women who worked at the World Trade Center. In fact, when Brooklyn asked why she was being attacked, Alice literally is like, guess it comes with the job of working at the World Trade Center. Then she adds on, sometimes it gets hard, especially with terrorism on the rise, but it pays my family well. Like every day she was fighting for her damn life to get to her goddamn cubicle. Also, Brooklyn keeps putting heavy emphasis on the fact that the World Trade Center is his second favorite landmark in New York, which I think is funny. Flashback from hell finally ends, and Brooklyn and the leader of the Gargoyles decide to go to Ground Zero to look for Alice. They're looking around, and Brooklyn starts understandably freaking out until he ends up finding Alice under a metal beam. She's very much dead. They can't get her out from under the beam by themselves, and they have to fly off without her to avoid being seen by humans. This awful story ends with this line, this will be a moment that Brooklyn the Gargoyle would never forget. Never. So, yeah, terrible. I lost my mind reading this and picked another Gargoyles fic to read through also. This one includes a character who's a time traveler, I think, and they know a 9/11 is going to happen and decide to tell another gargoyle, like, hey, buddy, 9/11 is going to happen tomorrow. And the other gargoyle is obviously like, oh my god, why didn't you say something sooner? We have to tell somebody. And then the sun rises and they immediately turn to stone. The gargoyles wake up that night to 9/11 and are obviously upset. So like in the last fic, they go to Ground Zero, this time to help instead of just find one girl Brooklyn like and then leave. They're immediately yelled at and told to leave until someone is like, no, we need their help. And so they let them stay. And then we even get a scene of the dog gargoyle finding someone in the rubble. We then cut to a year later with everyone meeting at what was once Ground Zero, and everyone is taking turns saying things, and Brooklyn the gargoyle decides to lie to everyone there and claims they had tried to warn everyone, but no one listened, which is a literal lie. So gargoyles aside, it's clear at this point that these fics exist in several different fan communities, so I decided to search a handful of popular things followed by 9/11 fanfiction to see if we get any results, and if so, how many. Every single search had several results. For instance, here's the first result I came across for One Direction, and it's 5 different stories from, I'm assuming, 5 different universes, because in each story YN is in some way a victim of the attacks and is dating one of the One Direction members. In 4 of the stories, YN is in one of the hijacked planes, and in the last one, YN is an employee at the World Trade Center. In all of them, YN calls a One Direction member and they're having a very traumatic goodbye over the phone, and YN dies. In the Liam one, they even have a daughter that she gets to die and leave behind, so isn't that neat? I'm gonna read out the author's note because it made me laugh. Just hold on. BTW, I didn't just post this for no reason. I posted this because this honestly affected so many families across the nation. It is incredibly saddening knowing that some people were just heading to work as per usual and got killed upon arrival. It is absolutely horrifying knowing that so many people lost sons, daughters, moms, dads, sisters, brothers, cousins, aunts, uncles, wives, husbands, boyfriends, girlfriends, and even friends. Then I don't know, the author talks a little bit about how their aunt worked next to the Twin Towers, but the trains were running late, so she didn't end up getting to work on time. A few other things about 9/11, and then adds a little side note at the end. A side note, on that day, my grandma rushed to the bank and took out $3,000 because she thought they had also sent bombers. LOL, it's not that funny, but it is. I just want to go over a few of the comments. Someone said, not going to lie, but as somebody who was born on the exact day 9/11 happened, but 8 years after, it doesn't sit right with me to have this as a story, because the amount of backlash I get for having a birthday on the day makes me almost triggered that anybody can make a story on this event. I have low-key nothing against you, I just wouldn't like the pain of people, not at all specifically me, turned into a story online where people could just copy it word for word or use the idea and get possibly paid for it, which, like, fair. I know exactly what they're saying of maybe don't make 9/11 into One Direction fanfic, like, extremely fair point, but the way that they said it, wow. This person said, I'm literally bawling my eyes out, thank you. I just can't read things like this, especially if it's this One Direction. This one this one made me laugh. I don't usually cry about the 9/11 terrorist attacks, but then I remember that my best friend told her dad had to work at the Twin Towers that day, but he didn't go because her mom was giving birth to her older brother, and if her dad did go to work that day, he would have died, and my best friend wouldn't have been born. That's the thing that made me cry. I just really particularly enjoy that they had to point out that no, they were not crying about 9/11 happening or the people that died. That's not what they're crying about. They don't normally cry at 9/11. I didn't end up reading any more One Direction ones because I just did not want to, but I did take a look at some fanfic covers, and yeah, love makes you do crazy things, living in the moments of 9/11, and then we have all 5 of the One Direction boys in Letterman jackets, and then just 9/11, Larry Styleson. At this point, I decided to go back to the start of this and find a Naruto one while I was in call with some of my friends. We went to go check out the song the author put at the top, but a fun thing about fanfiction.net is that you can't select any text from the actual writing to help protect from fic stealers. This also meant that I couldn't copy and paste the link, so I tried typing out the title. The first song that I thought it was paired in such a funny way, but then I realized that they actually meant 2 separate videos, so I manually typed out the links and got a sad piano song and a rain noise video, which you're supposed to listen to at the same time while reading this fanfiction about Naruto and his friends experiencing 9/11. I'm going to put the links in the description because I'd rather not get a copyright strike for some fanfiction background music, but feel free to play them both in the background while I go over this fic. Most of this is just build up to the actual attack, giving background on where the various characters are and what they're doing, and obviously most of the cast works at the towers. We get these ominous timestamps leading up, and each one has a date attached, you know, in case you forgot it was 9/11. So for context, Naruto is a counselor, basically HR from what I gathered from this, and he's telling 2 employees that their flirtatious relationship is against company policy, and they're moving them away farther to separate cubicles, like children. Anyway, this next part is what I want to focus on, so get your background music ready. Hey, look. I get it that we're supposed to move our stuff to another cubicle, but isn't that plane getting a little close? Mr. Zhao says with a slight disapproving look on his face, and I look out the window. The plane is getting close, but it'll move. Incoming plane aside, the fact that he has a disapproving look is so funny. Like, thank God we know this guy wasn't giving the plane his approval. Oh, it'll move, don't worry. I'll help you guys move if you need it. I need to call someone soon. I suddenly remember why I was thinking about Sakura. We're supposed to meet up tonight at Hijacked, the eatery. A really nice bar that me and her go to a lot, just to talk. I'm sorry. What? I have never in my life seen a single episode of Naruto, so I did a quick Google search to see if I was missing a reference, and as far as I can tell, I have not. So what was the reason to call the restaurant they were going to eat at in your Naruto 9/11 fanfiction Hijacked? Anyway, back to it. This is Naruto and his hijacked dinner buddy on the phone when the plane hits the tower, and I want to read out a few lines. I get a call from my best friend, as he knows I'm 7 floors away from him, and I chat it up. So wait, you're gonna pick me up at 8? Okay, see you when I get there. How's your day been so far? I say with a fairly happy voice. Well, had to tell some lovebirds to knock it off, but I guess that's not as bad as a depression case. How is yours? He asks in sincerity. He's so sweet. I can't stand if I had to live a day without him. Oof. Suddenly, my desk jolted into my stomach and the entire building seemed to shift. The entire office was in disarray. Screams started and everyone was asking what was going on. The world just turned upside down for me. Papers everywhere, computer monitors turned black, people fell over, cabinets shook. All that could go wrong went wrong. I thought we just had a major earthquake. What the hell was that? Did you feel it? I asked a stupid question. I'm in a mental state where anything could happen. I just wanted everything to turn off, all the alarms, all the screaming. Holy fucking shit, I hear Naruto say bluntly. This isn't like him. He's usually cool and businesslike whenever he's at work. I hear screams from his floor on the phone too. Sakura, I need you to listen to me. I think we just got hit by a plane. Naruto swore! I don't know if that's normal for him. I just thought it was funny. Also, yeah, the plane hit. Anyway, so at the exact same time, another character also experienced the plane, but in such an odd way. Like, this guy is sitting in a meeting and he looks through the window and he sees the plane and it's coming close. So he gets up and backs up and his buddy's like, "What are you doing?" I'm just gonna read the rest. I tug my hand away and point at the plane. My eyes start tearing up, crying more than I've ever seen before. I am a man of hard feelings and business. And I was crying. Everyone was staring at me as I was making a scene. I point one finger at the window, shaking uncontrollably and still sobbing. Everyone turned around and saw a great white nose of a plane headed straight for our heads. I burned my eyes on the tinted windows, but was able to see 2 people in the front seat, and they weren't wearing pilot hats. The idea that this guy could first of all see the pilots at all, but that he would be able to tell they weren't actual pilots because they weren't wearing hats is wild to me. But also that he saw this plane and was just crying and pointing as this plane was apparently slowly creeping up on them. My God. So we get this intense update about the plane hitting, an event that quite literally happened, but that they've also included Naruto in for whatever reason. But on to this other character, which has this weird part. Basically, these girls walk up to him and ask him for a picture, but first of all, he describes them as nice-looking females, which made me gag. Maybe that's in character, I wouldn't know, but still gross. But we go on, and for whatever reason, they decide to include the girl as 15, and I googled the age of this character, and he's apparently in that age range for most of the series, but in this fic he seems to have a full-time job in New York, and we learn at the start he's apparently in a relationship with the woman who he lives with, which means he's probably a grown-ass man here, so I'm gonna call this weird. Okay, fine, just hurry up, I say with a smile. I go to the other side of the building, which is quite a walk with the girls, and set them right next to the central station. Oh, I'd love to live here. I can't wait till I live here, she almost started screaming. I took the picture and looked at the LCD screen and gasped. What is it? I don't think we look that ugly, she said, ripping the camera from my hands. I raised a finger, staring at the window, pointing my finger uncontrollably. I instantly pile on the tears and start crying. What's wrong? I don't understand. She looked at the window and dropped the camera. Her scream pitched through my mind and rung like a gong. The camera hit the floor and was laying on the side. The girls had what they wanted, a picture of Grand Central, but they got much more than that. They got a picture of the plane hitting the biggest building in the World Trade Center. So yet another pointing and crying reaction, which the author seems partial to. He also does not apparently see this happen until he looks at the picture, and the girls did not hear the sound of a passenger plane crashing into a skyscraper, but yeah, he just so happens to get a picture of the first plane hitting the tower. The only video I believe that's out there of the first plane hitting the tower was also a crazy coincidence. Two filmmakers were doing a documentary and getting some B-roll and just so happened to get a footage of the attack, but it now appears we also have a great photo. Anyway, the next character is the woman he was with at the beginning, and wouldn't you know it, his wife. So yeah, grown-ass man. Anyway, they have a very upsetting phone call that is basically goodbye because she's working in the tower. We then get this line to remind you that this is a real actual event that happened. And then we go to Naruto's POV again. So this part is basically Naruto escaping the tower, describing how awful it is, mentioning the people literally jumping to their deaths, and Naruto making it out of the building alive. Then to wrap this whole thing up, we have a character trapped with their team. They give a speech about how they're gonna die, they make a really sad poster and hold it up to the window. Then the second plane hits and we get an author's note. We are America. We aren't going down without a fight. There is more to this story than America. This is more than the building. Over 3,000 children lost a parent from the attacks. I'm not one of them, so I'll never know the pain. Ever. Well, extremely sad story, but I hope that it gives you hope that there is something to do and people to save when disaster strikes. People all the time need to learn that the world has changed. Changed for the better or the worst. I don't know which, but I know I've changed the way you view the World Trade Center attacks. Keep on remembering. Username out. This entire fic was posted on September 11th, 2011, and they seem to think people still didn't know the world changed after the attacks 10 years prior. Also, they seemed extra sure that they've changed the way I think about 9/11. I don't know what they think they wrote that changed my thoughts. I mostly just want to check out the restaurant Hijacked, see what the menu is like. I'd assume they've decided to change their name, being in New York during 9/11 and all. Also, I scratched it out because in the chance that people actually watch this video, I don't want to make it easier for people to harass this person, but they signed off with their username like, username out, which I think is a very funny way to end your author's note on your 9/11 Naruto fanfiction. But I don't know, maybe I'm being too hard on them. I mean, this person in the comments seemed to have a very big 9/11 revelation after reading. Sniff. But on the topic of being too hard on them, that actually does bring me to an article I came across while researching this topic a while back, and I found it interesting. I went into this topic wanting to, in some way, answer the question, why are there so many 9/11 fanfics? And this article definitely gave me some perspective. It starts off by pointing out how tragic events have always been a source of inspiration for creatives, so it really shouldn't be that surprising that this happened with 9/11, which makes sense, honestly, despite how jarring it is to see. This article then includes this portion of a Buffy the Vampire Slayer 9/11 fic, and it immediately feels different than the ones I've been reading. Like, yeah, this is just a portion of it, and it's fully possible that if I track the fic down, it would be equally as horrifying as the rest of these have been, but this just feels like more of an expression of grief. Putting into a story what you struggle to handle yourself. I was just a baby when 9/11 actually happened, so I will never know what it felt like at the time. I grew up in the aftermath, but to remember a time before 9/11 and to experience the world after it had to be pretty hard to grasp, especially as a young person in the world. I mean, like, especially around the time of 9/11, it was literally everywhere. Heavy patriotism and grief and war was all over TV and radio and every other media form, and you could not really escape it for a while. So honestly, it's not that surprising that the 9/11 fanfics would start popping up, specifically ones that seem to circle around characters processing grief or feelings of powerlessness from being unable to stop this awful attack, and somewhere these characters may have been able to prevent the attacks altogether to almost give a moment of comfort. The article even includes an interview with a veteran who joined the military right after 9/11 and how writing fanfiction helped them come to terms with a lot of their feelings surrounding it. A fandom journalist from Teen Vogue pointed out my main issues with the stories I've gone over in this video. The dynamics of fandom and how it relates to politics can also create fiction that's less respectful and more grotesque. With years of distance between the stories written and the original events of 9/11, there seems to be some sort of cushion for fans who choose to use those events as a catalyst for relationships and Iraq and Afghanistan for settings, Stitch said. The cushion allows them room to fictionalize real-world events that change the shape of the world as we know it, but it also insulates them from having to think about what they may be putting into the world. Not a single one of the fan fictions I've read for this video have felt in any way respectful or like someone was using it to express or display feelings in a way that is not blatantly harmful. Most of them included a basic misunderstanding of 9/11, and one of them even decided to be racist and xenophobic by acting like these, quote, Arabic-sounding guys were running around the World Trade Center for months before the attacks just assaulting female employees. I feel like most of the fics I read through were mostly looking to write a sad story or needed a fic to write, and they just looked at their calendars and thought, oh, 9/11 is coming up. What if? I also think a lot of them are kids. Unfortunately, kids do dumb things. Sometimes they track mud into the house, and other times they post their One Direction 9/11 fanfic on Wattpad. It's a dice roll. I think my personal opinion after all this is depending on the author's personal experience with 9/11 and how they handle the material, it may just turn out okay, but the majority of 9/11 fanfics are just going to be awful, especially if it was written in the last, I don't know, like 15 years or so, give or take. If you are right now thinking about making a 9/11 fanfic over 20 years after the fact despite having nearly no knowledge of the attacks or any level of personal experience, maybe just don't. Just take a minute to reconsider.